Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the Music Lab podcast. My name is Dogg, and I am so excited to be back with you for another episode. And in this episode, we're doing a Zoom interview with Alex from Weird Phishes. Welcome, Alex.
Hey everybody. Hi Dog.
How's it going, brother? So, guys, as always, make sure to like, follow, subscribe, do all that fun stuff on our social media pages as well as our YouTube channel. Check out our sponsor, RAR Outfitters, RAWR Outfitters.com for all your Christmas clothing and all that fun stuff. So let's dive right in, Alex. So, you guys, for the audience that is not familiar with you, you are a Phish and Radiohead mashup band. Is that
That's
fair to say?
yeah, totally fair.
Hate to say, hate to have labels for anybody, but
No, it
that's
might
part
be
of the
unfair to
fun.
say it any other way, I think. Yeah.
So, are you a Radiohead guy or are you a Phish guy?
Oh, I'm both. And I've been more of one or the other over different periods of time. But at this point, I'm pretty firmly planted in both. It's a little hard to be as active of a Radiohead guy when Fish is out there touring every year very consistently, and it's an easy thing to be so involved in on a regular basis.
How many shows have you seen from each band?
Radiohead, I've only made it to two, but I've seen a Tom York solo show and I saw The Smile recently too. Um, and then Fish, I think 52 or something around there.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
nice.
How about you?
Well, so it's interesting. I my first concert ever was Alanis Morissette at Hershey Park Stadium in 1996. And this little band from Scotland opened up for them, Radiohead, on
Wow.
that tour.
Okay.
And it was great because they were like, and I've read about this since then, like they were road testing a lot of stuff for OK Computer. So, like, we heard stuff that, was eventually going to be on the album.
They were
And they
opening for
said
Alanis Morissette.
they opened for Alanis Morissette. I think it was 13 or 18 dates that they did. And yeah, so and he said that Tom said that in an interview that a lot of the fans booed them most nights because they were there to see Alanis.
He also
And
seems
then
like the kind of person who might like to believe that they were booing him, or
yeah,
to
it's
some
par for the
degree.
course. So yeah, so I've seen Radiohead 14 times, and then Fish, I really, I think you know, and we can talk about this at length because, Phish is one of those bands you can do that. But I didn't really get into Phish until about 5 years ago. I knew about them. All my friends were like, "What are you doing? Why aren't you listening to them?" And I don't know. I just don't think I was ready for that, journey. And then
Yeah,
once I got onto it, man, I'm with you. Like it's
the whole thing.
yeah. So I think I've seen them now 4 times. I've seen Trey, I think 3 times, and we saw the Taboose tour last year with
Nice.
Trey and Goose. That was up in Albany, actually, where you
Oh,
guys are
awesome.
playing this weekend. Yeah, yeah. So anyway, so yeah, so why do this? Why do this mashup? What was the inspiration? Talk about the history of the band for the audience.
Um, yeah, so it started really as a joke. Um, I was I don't know, I was really into Fish, and I was me and Josh make a lot of music together outside of this as well. Josh is the violinist, another singer. Um, but and we were roommates, for a long time. But I was just made a joke to him because we would always I guess yeah, he we would joke about, like, oh, Fish fans kind of just end up shoehorning everything back into Fish somehow. So I was on a tear with that a little bit, and I was like, And I think we were listening to Radiohead, and I was like, oh, wouldn't it be funny if, there's a band called Weird Fishes and they did Radiohead in the style of Fish? That'd be ridiculous. Um, and we had a laugh, and then I just played the chords for Paranoid Android, like in like a funky style, just to mess around and continue our little joke. And I was like, oh, that sounds pretty cool. It's actually pretty sweet. And then, we thought about it a little more, and I was like, like both these bands are actually rooted in, I think of them as very, very, very different bands. But then musically, I thought about them, and they're both kind of just rooted in jazz. Um, just, Fish is taking the playful, improvisational, more joyous side of jazz, or not necessarily joyous, but just like, just playful and out there. And Radiohead's taking the melancholy side of jazz, and I think there's really a lot more common ground musically than you'd initially think, or there is a lot more common ground musically than I initially thought. So that was kind of the impetus for it. And then we reached out to a venue, Thunder Road, rest in peace. That was a great Boston, or Somerville area venue, that went under during the pandemic. We reached out to them, and they were like, "Yeah, great idea." And I in my email, I think I said I was like, "Oh, we have a band. We're doing OK Computer, all the way through." Just to like see, and they got back to us real quick, and then we were like, "Oh, we got to put a band together." They were down, like we booked the show. They were like, they gave us a Friday night. Um, so yeah, so then we got the ball rolling.
That was 2019, correct?
That instance and email took place in 2000, at the end of 2018, but then our first show is in 2019. Yeah.
So you kind of touched on the pandemic, obviously starting right before the pandemic, well, about a year before the pandemic. Talk about how that changed your kind of philosophy on the band. Like, did it kind of put everything at a standstill, or talk about that like transition?
Honestly, it did put things at a total standstill. We were not, we didn't have any sort of like, I mean, we had like some social media and stuff, but we didn't really have like an infrastructure or anything where like we could really be like, using the pandemic to our benefit. Like I think some other bands were able to. Um, I think maybe if we'd, gotten it together a little more and done like had more confidence doing like streams and stuff, like maybe that would have been a good idea. Um, but I think, post pandemic, it's been great to be playing shows, and I think we have more momentum now than, I mean, we definitely have more momentum now than we did back then, so that's good. But yeah, it was an absolute standstill. Not for all of us musically, not for any of us musically, but for Weird Fishes, especially because we kind of just have only been a live thing ever. Like that's really all it is. So yeah, no, we didn't do a whole lot during the pandemic. We got together and played, but that was it, you
Yeah.
know.
So you said kind of before we started that you guys are all kind of from different areas, but you all met in Boston. Talk about that experience meeting and talk about the city itself.
All right. So meeting, we met Pat, our bass player. Josh and I used to play in a band called Nemus. I've known Josh the longest, like 12, 13 years at this point. We used to play in a band called Nemus, and we played with Pat and PJ's old band, or oh no, sorry, Pat's old band. We played with them at this weird family festival in Shrewsbury once. Shrewsbury is a town out by Worcester in Massachusetts.
Yeah.
Um, and I had remembered that it was like a funk band, like, funk, hints of jam or whatever. And when we had to put the band together, like like I just described, because we got booked for a show, I reached out to Pat on Facebook. I'd only met him the one other time, and then he got back immediately, and he was like, "Yeah, this sounds great. Let's do it." He didn't know Radiohead really, uh, almost at all, I think he said. Um, but he enjoyed it. He loved Fish already. Um, we had a different drummer named Devin who played in a band called Gang of Thieves from Burlington. He played our very first two shows with us. But he lived, and at the time we thought it was just a low commitment, kind of one or two off project. So he lives like 2.5 hours out in Massachusetts, and he's a great drummer, but he couldn't, it was he couldn't get it off the ground with us at the time. Um, and then Pat introduced us to our current drummer, PJ, who is also amazing drummer. They've played in a bunch of projects together prior to this. Um, and now PJ's down in Brooklyn, but they did play together in I think in 3 or 4 different projects over the years. Or they've been the backing, the bass player, drummer, lock in rhythm section for like a bunch of projects. Um, and yeah, and then Pat also knew Derek. Pat actually like ended up getting a lot of the people together. He like just has played with a bunch of people and knew a lot of people. And Derek, we met on the day of our first show, because originally I was thinking like, I was like, why have we even booked this? This is a total disaster. Like, it was the day of the show, and I was stressing out about getting the album, like getting all the songs from the album arranged and everything. And I was like, well, Josh and I played together for years. I trust Josh. He's a violinist. We're like musical compadres. I know that I have faith in him to like comp on the keyboard parts, and like we'll just do it without a keyboardist. Like whatever. And Pat was like, dude, this guy is great. I swear, like this keys player is awesome. He loves Radiohead. He plays in some Dead tribute bands. He's gonna be good. I was like, all right, bring him to rehearsals, like sure. But like if it doesn't work out, like the show is that night. So it's gotta be okay if everyone says no. And then he was fucking amazing. Blew everybody away at practice and still blows everybody away every time we play. So
That's D-Rock for you, right?
that's right. Yeah. Wait, how did you know that?
I guess I did some research, man.
I didn't know if I'd actually put that out anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah. So like I think this is a pertinent question, and hopefully you can kind of dive into this a little bit. So do you feel personally, as well as like the rest of your band, is it easier to translate Radiohead to Fish, or is it easier to translate Fish to Radiohead?
um, our whole thing has been kind of translating Radiohead to Fish, because it is for the live setting, and it's like more of the shows and the vibe that we curate at the shows are is like Fish heavy, like
Okay.
so if we were to take Fish and turn it would be, I would say it would be a lot more difficult to turn Fish into a Radiohead style. Firstly, because what is a Radiohead style? Like they have like 6 or 7 styles like across their albums.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, you really could dive into it by album,
right, yeah,
yeah.
right, exactly. Like, and that would be, I mean, I've always like someone's asked me this before, kind of, they're like, why don't you do Fish in the Style Radiohead? And I think if we were to do that, maybe that would be the studio side, where we take Farmhouse and put it, put it on a bunch of modular synths, or
Yeah, or
that
blip it out, or yeah, like
would be
yeah,
the
definitely.
studio experimentation, whereas the Fish is the live experimentation.
Yeah. I think that's actually not a bad, like angle maybe like to go down sometime.
Thought about it for like a April Fool's Day
Yeah.
joke or something, just take everything opposite.
Yeah, like an encore or something for, a show.
Right, get our little,
Surprise everybody.
yeah.
So yeah, so how is Boston, like how is the music scene in Boston for like indie bands, for for bands like you, for up and coming bands? Like how do you feel Boston is, is it pretty, like are there a lot of venues that are welcoming, or is it kind of, a gauntlet?
um I think so it's weird. Before we had Fishes, I would have said that it was more like a gauntlet and hard to break into. And also, I didn't grow up in Boston or Massachusetts. I grew up in Long Island. Um, so I mean, I've been here for like 15 years, but I'm still like the least
Mhm.
steeped in the state. Um, but in the like just the straight up rock scene, like not the jam scene, just the rock scene, that felt like there was just this old guard, and probably I think still is for like no real reason. And it's just like this weird, I don't know, put the work in gatekeepery mindset, like where it's just, well, we're a rowdy, dirty, loud rock club with bad sound, and that's how it is, and that's how it's gonna be. And I think that probably still exists. But the jam scene in Boston, Massachusetts, New England in general, I think is pretty excellent. Um, or really excellent. Like we've met a lot of people who are just really great, like in promoters and bookers and sound people who want to pay attention to musicians, and it's like it's a good scene up here. Like Benny Tucker, who books us here in Boston. He's been a great help, and I'd heard his name and stuff for years, and then like we met him, and it was like, oh, this is great. This is a great like work together thing, team, I guess. I almost said work
Yeah.
together thing.
Connection. Yeah, of
Yeah.
course. Yeah. So, let's talk about you guys have come out as that you don't want to be labeled like a cover band or tribute band, correct?
Yeah, kind of correct. I mean, we are by definition, maybe, I guess, a cover band. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think of us as a tribute band at all, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's important, like we said, and we kind of joked earlier, like labels and stuff, but I think it is important because you do want your audience to understand where you're coming from and like what your vibe is. And like, I think by establishing that, I think you are really like letting your audience know that. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, totally. And
Okay,
I think
good.
like the people who have been to a show and the people who continue to come to shows, like totally get it. Like there are like, especially in Boston where we've played the most and cultivated the biggest following, it's just like everyone there is in on the same bit as us, which is nice, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I was researching trying to find YouTube videos of your guys' performances. I got to watch that full performance of the show you guys did, and then a couple like, just one-off songs and stuff. Is that a focus for you guys to get more, like out there so people can, that haven't been able to see you live in person?
Yes. The flip side of it, like we just did our In Rainbow show here in Boston, and we filmed and recorded that, and we'll have that hopefully on YouTube soon as well. Um, but the flip side of it, and this is also probably just me being me, or like I don't know, but I think when we first got, I guess we didn't get announced, but like when we first got like our first bit of coverage, um, we definitely saw like a lot of, there's like a lot of negativity and stuff on Facebook comments and stuff, or not a lot, but an equal amount maybe. And yeah, for every person who says like, these are my two favorite bands, this is awesome, there's another person who's like, this should not exist. And you just, I feel like we've kind of taken this approach with our whatever we're putting online, where it's just like, this is a possibly delicate thing, and we don't want to give anybody an inch to think it sucks. So like if we're putting something online, we want it to be something that we're really proud of. We want it to, I think at this point there's enough out there where like we can saturate a little more and probably not and run into this risk a little less. But we were really protective of it at the very beginning. Whereas like, we're not going to put something online unless we feel like, yeah, there were people in the room. We got a professional video crew. We got the multi-track recording, we mixed it properly, and it all came together right. Like we don't want really any output of a Weird Fishes show to look not great because that would give people that little foot
Ammunition.
in the door to yeah. And that was probably just a knee-jerk reaction to seeing people be a little negative about it online. But like I don't think I've heard of anyone who that's not true. I found one person on Reddit who came to a show and didn't love it. But otherwise, everyone who's been to a show has been just the best. I think we have like I mean I'm probably biased because it's a cross section of two of my favorite bands, but I would say that we have like the best fans and like or at least the people who are most like us.
And I guess it's hard to kind of tell, but do you get an idea like per audience, like who is like what side, like each
Yeah, we can usually
okay.
tell. Yeah. Or if we can't tell from body language, a lot of people like come repping their home band or whichever one it is. And like the best thing to like look out and see when we're playing is like someone with like a piece of merch from like both bands on. Like there's a girl I can envision who like who's been to I don't know, probably 4 or 5 shows, and multiple times she's worn like a Radiohead Bear t-shirt with like a Fish hoodie or like the other way around or something. And it's just like, all right, you're totally in.
Yeah, that's I mean, but to your point of really wanting to put stuff out there that you guys were proud of, like that's the vein of Fish and Radiohead, like only perfection, right? I mean, like that's those
Well,
two
that it's
bands,
at the very least, it's the vein of Radiohead.
right?
Fish is a little maybe opposite, where it's they put everything out. Like, I mean, I subscribe to the Live Fish app, and it's like it's not even put out. It's just like if you subscribe, they're putting their multi-track mixes up an hour after the show is over. But I guess it wasn't until you said that I just realized, like, yeah, that is the Radiohead vein completely. Like, if it's going to take us a year to get a full show recorded on a video, we'll take it. If it's going to take them 6 years to make an album, they'll do it.
Which and that's a great segue because I it was such a treat during the pandemic that Radiohead was releasing those shows. Do you remember that?
Yeah,
Like, I mean, epic shows like the Glastonbury show, like the show from '96. Like,
yeah,
there's
shows
so
from the
many.
vault that people were like clamoring
Yes,
for a long time.
yes. Which you did take a page off. I looked at your website. I love the public library. Talk
Thanks.
about that because most of our audience probably is not familiar with that concept. So, give us a little taste of that.
Uh, well, I'll zoom out for a second. So I mean, I think I told you beforehand. I'm a front end web developer, and we needed a website. And this whole thing has been like a joke that has gone further than we thought it would go. Um, so that when it came time to like have a website, I was like, all right, what should our website look like? And I was like, Fish and Radiohead, Fish and Radiohead's websites. So I don't know if you're familiar with Fish or their website, but the whole website that is not the public library portion is uh font for font, color for color, a refactor of Fish's website. And then the public library concept, for anyone who out there who doesn't know, on Radiohead's website, it's basically this big back
Trove.
catalog
Yeah.
stash of everything that they have from all their different eras, like the merch designs from every era, um, video, you know, archives from every era, um, B-side artwork, everything like insides of album covers, and they have it segmented in every era. So on our website, we don't have nearly as much content as them, but we do have the little Weird Fishes public library section, which has most show posters or merch designs, or sometimes designs that never made it onto anything. Um, so that's just been a fun little corner of our website. And thanks for noticing, because I don't know how many people actually notice, but if it's making me laugh, I'm excited to put it out there.
So, so do you design then the tour posters as well then, or do you have someone that does that?
It's been me. I'm trying to think. There's a couple like venue. Sometimes venues will slap their logo on our picture or something, or if I don't have the time to do it. But for better or worse, it's me. Um, which leads to some foot dragging sometimes because it's, or we're suffering in other departments because it's like I'm probably wearing too many hats, and it's
Yeah.
not our full-time job either. So, but yeah, all the tour posters and all the graphic design and everything, that's me. Yeah.
Okay. So, let's talk about your relationship with Omni Arts Group and Emily, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. How that came about, what they do for you guys, like, and, just that relationship.
Cool. Yeah. Um, Emily Vanderweel, she's located in Burlington, Vermont, and she's been, from my understanding, booking bands for I think close to 20 years or something like that. Um, and we had a mutual friend who put us in touch. And we had like a 45-minute phone conversation back in, I think, January. And then we came on and tested the waters in, she booked, I think the first days she booked for us were in March of this past year.
Yeah.
And then she booked us through the spring and the summer, and then our recent fall runs out to Chicago and Cincinnati and stuff, and then also now our upcoming weekend in Burlington and Albany. And the funny thing is, we did this weekend, same routing like last February. We did Burlington, Albany, at Nectar's and Lark Hall, the same two venues, both great venues. And that time it was booked. It was actually our buddy Benny Tucker here in Boston who booked it, who is excellent like around here. And even working with Emily, I asked her, I was like, can Benny still take care of Boston stuff because he knows this scene? And then it turned out that Emily and her partner Matt and Benny all know each other anyways. So I was like, okay, great. So there's no weird bad blood here because I don't want anyone to feel like, I don't know, we just like, used them up and got to this next thing or whatever, jumped around. But yeah, so far it's been great. We've been adjusting as a band to, like, work on our scheduling is probably like the hardest thing at the moment because everyone, like, two of our guys are musicians full time, Josh and Derek. Um, so like wedding season, fall is like, sometimes those things get booked years in advance, or like anything that takes like precedence, it's like hard to find dates that work for everybody all the time. But it's been a cool transition working with Emily. And it's been great so far, and we're looking forward to more of it.
So do you feel like that is the biggest challenge that you guys have as a band is just managing the work, like, like the work band, kind of balance?
Yeah, yeah. Managing period, I think,
Yeah. Yeah.
is where it's the hardest. Yeah, that's I think that's probably the hardest thing in most any band. I guess, or well, we have the luxury of not toiling in the studio over albums because I guess that kills a lot of bands too, I think.
Well, just the cost of it. Yeah. I mean, all
Yeah.
these bands that I've talked to, in the past 2 years since doing this podcast, and, I focus mostly on up and coming bands. So, the struggles, like it back in the day, you were able to go in the studio, record an album, and then tour behind that album. And now it's the complete opposite. You have to like tour, then go in the studio, then
Yep.
record, and still tour while you're doing it because you can't afford the studio time. Like
Yeah.
it's tough. Like it's really, really tough. So, but anyway. So the from a fish perspective, were you excited about the Sphere show announcement? Is that something that you personally are going to try and attend, or it's too much?
Uh, it would be awesome to go. I put in the lottery. I put in a lottery request. But it's probably going to be one of the toughest tickets to get ever for a Phish show. So we'll see. We'll see how the actual like Ticketmaster on sale goes. Um, but I'm not going to pay like StubHub prices for a ticket. But me and my girlfriend would love to go. So hopefully something goes our direction.
It's funny because when we saw the announcement, I said to my girlfriend, I said, I said, as much as that would be amazing, like I'm gonna hold out until Radiohead plays there, and
Oh,
like
someone
that's
else
gonna,
just recently said that as well.
yep. I'm like, if that like that's going to be the first band that I see at the Sphere, like or Pearl Jam. I think that would be my other only other band, but
I don't know if they would do the Sphere. They kind of super hate Ticketmaster and Live Nation, and they kind of own the Sphere.
well, no,
Or MSG owns the Sphere.
yeah, MSG and Pearl Jam has a really good relationship with MS. Like they've played MSG many, many times over the years. So I actually think that could happen. But we'll see. So, what do you think about the Smile, man, as a band?
I love it. Um, I think it's great. The only song that I haven't liked is the newest single. Um, and haven't liked is even strong to say. I just didn't like it as much as I really liked their album, and I really loved Bending Hectic, the first single from the upcoming album.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think it's great. I mean, I think their first album sounded like just a perfect marriage of In Rainbows and Moonshaped Pool, which are two of my favorites. Um, so yeah, it's great. And I saw him live, and that was awesome too. How about you? Do
Yeah,
you like it?
yeah, I do. I have always been a champion of more Johnny,
Yeah.
and
Did you
so
go and see him?
I no, I have not, and it pains me that I did not get. I should have seen them in Philly this when they played in Philly, but I did not. The Forest Hills show I heard was amazing. Was that the show you went to?
No, I would have liked to go to that one too.
Yeah,
That's a cool venue. I've been to that venue I guess just once before, and it's a cool venue. It sounds good.
yeah,
Uh but no, I saw them at Roadrunner here in
in
Boston.
Boston. Yeah, was that the opening night of the tour?
I don't
Was Boston the opening, or was that like that run? Was that the opening night?
I don't think so.
It was okay.
I want to say they played one show before it, maybe.
Okay, but it was definitely like in the beginning of the run, right?
Yeah, it was in
Yeah,
the
okay,
beginning, and then a lot of people get routed this way where it's Boston and then like a date or two in New York. Like
right.
I think people come here on the Wednesday and then they go there for the Thursday, Friday, or the bigger thing,
Yeah.
um, or something like that. But wait, now you got me thinking because I want to look it up and see and see when
Setlist.fm, brother.
you might be right. If oh no, this is the other tour. Was that 2022 that they toured then? Yeah, it must have been.
Yeah, it wouldn't have been last year. I misspoke. So let's talk about like 2024, man. What do your fans like? What does our audience have to expect like for live shows for you guys? Like, do you have anything that's
Yeah.
concrete or booked?
Yeah, so we have a bunch of February dates that are getting finalized.
Okay.
Uh, and then in our next big Boston play, which our whole thing kind of centers around like the Boston shows right now, because those are the biggest ones. Those are the ones we space out and kind of like that's where our that's where our home vibe is.
Yeah.
Um, we're playing with Prince Bowie on not Prince and Bowie, but there's a band called Prince Bowie. I don't know if you know them. They do great covers of Prince and David Bowie, and it's um, like kind of a rotating cast of musicians with like a some of them are they play every time. But Eric Gould from Pink Talking Fish, he puts it together. And we actually played with them once before, and it's the horn section from Turquoise is part of it.
Mm.
And or formerly from Turquoise.
Right. Yeah.
I think now they're in a band called Cool Cool Cool, and they're a great horn section. Um, they play with them frequently. Adrian from The Breakfast and Kung Fu is drumming with them. So we're playing with them. Sorry, all of that to say, we're playing with them at the Sinclair, which is a
Yeah.
you know mid-sized venue here in Boston. That's an exciting play for us. Um, and it kind of seems like it goes this way where we do like headlining show, opening slot in Boston, larger headlining show, opening slot again, um, larger headlining show, hopefully following that. And it seems to work out where we can kind of, get some people that way. So that's what the Boston or Northeast people can look forward to. And then for you guys, we're hoping to make our way down to Philly in either later March or early April. We'd like to do, or I think we're looking at doing Philly and DC in a little run. A lot of people have asked for us to come down to the 8x10 or recommended that as a spot.
Yep. In Baltimore. Yep. Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, not DC,
Yeah.
Baltimore.
Yep. No, and yeah, maybe we can get you, that a gig, like if you're on that run, maybe we can get you something up in our area too. That'd be awesome.
Yeah. Or
Um,
you're not Philly, I guess, right? Or you are.
yeah, we're an hour and a half west of Philly and an
Oh,
hour and a half north of Baltimore.
okay. Okay.
Yeah.
But you're
So
still
it's
only 2.5 to New York.
2.5 to New York. Yeah.
That's
Up
great.
78, man.
By the way, Smile, it was Providence. That's where they played before here.
Ah, that makes sense. Actually, yes, you're right. Because I was looking at StubHub to see like what tickets were like for that, like for the opening show, and I do remember it was Providence. You're right.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen a show at that venue in Providence?
Uh, I have played at that venue in Providence.
Oh, sweet,
Um,
nice. Okay.
yeah, it was actually really cool. Not with this band or any band really. Josh, good segue to talk about other musicians.
Yeah.
Josh, our violinist, he writes some great music, great originals. Josh Knowles, if anyone wants to look him up, Josh Knowles music. Um, he writes great like violin based. I don't want to say I don't want to say pop. It's poppier, but like it's still experimental and electronic and really cool stuff. Um, I I'm a little biased because one, I'm his friend, and two, I produced it and mixed it. But his last album, the Providence Ballet, um, one of the choreographers choreographed a whole piece, a whole act of a show to his music. Um,
Wow.
so we performed, the two of us performed, and it was like a more experimental piece, like ballet piece. It was not obviously not classical. But their big vision for it was that they wanted us to be like on the stage, like with the dancers. So we're not dancing, but like on the stage, like
That would have been
oh,
something special.
that would have been a lack of vision. uh, but like yeah, so we actually did six shows at the Veterans Memorial Auditorium in Providence, which was awesome. Yeah, and we did and that was right before the pandemic. That was in February of 2020. Um, so that was right before there, and then right after the pandemic, we did more dates with them in Providence, not at the Vets, but at another venue. But yeah, so it's funny you asked about that venue.
So, yeah, we got a couple more questions for you. So, let's get to. I want to talk about Fish because we've kind of talked enough about Radiohead. So, I have seen Trey, I've seen Fish. What do you like about each iteration of each band?
Cool. Um, well, like I think has come across so far, I'm obviously I play guitar and sing in Weird Fishes, so I'm a musician and a guitarist. Um, and then also I mentioned like I have produced for Josh. I missed our podcast last night because I was in a session. So I have passion for recording studio, um, and that side of things. And I think for me, like that intersection is, pretty clear. What I actually like about what each of them are doing in those areas is, I mean, I think Trey's obviously an excellent guitarist. Um, and he's probably, it's probably my favorite guitarist, one of my favorite guitarists. Um, and what's super inspirational about Fish, the first thing that was super inspirational to me about Fish when I was like reading about them before I really knew anything about them at all, um, was how committed they were to a single event. Like I think the first thing I read about Big Cypress, and I was like, which is their big New Year's show in 1999 for the Millennium Show, where they played overnight. If anyone doesn't know, um, and I thought that was like, I was like, wow, that's wild, that's crazy. They played all night, that's cool. And I think I think I was on this tear of like looking at like records or something, because I had also I have a memory at the same time reading about the Flaming Lips recording their 24-hour song, Seven N Skies or something like that. Do you know
Okay.
about that by any
No,
chance? All right.
no.
Well,
I know
Flaming Lips.
Yoshimi.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's a great record too. Well, Flaming Lips is another band that like loves their bits. Like I
So,
like and one of their things was that they recorded an album that was 24 hours long. And then one of Fish's big things, I think I was looking at like largest concerts, same kind of brain category. And I stumbled across an article that was like largest millennial gathering, um, or millennium gathering. And that was Fish's Big Cypress. And then, down the rabbit hole a little bit, uh, just the amount of preparation and production and like insane production that they'll put in for one show, like a Halloween show or a New Year's show or one special event, or probably the Sphere coming up. Like it's like the amount of production that they put in for a night on Halloween is the amount of production that like a band would put in for an entire like stadium tour. And that's super inspirational. That's something that continues to be super inspirational. Um, as opposed to, just getting me into the band, then now I'm in. Like that's something that I still always think of and like remember, um or try to remember, try to keep in mind. um like even for our, do I have anyone lying around for our shows? Like we did this little like Fish used to in the 90s, they did a WPTBM tickets. They did, by or sorry, they did PTBM tickets, Fish tickets
okay.
by mail, where you could enter the lottery and have the tickets sent to you. And they continued to do that up until like I think like a year ago. And that's, just because they did away with the paper side of it. They still do their request period and everything. So like for our show, we did a WPTBM, whereas Weird Fish's tickets by mail. And I think I started that in our last Boston February show, because it was our first Ticketmaster venue, and the fees were like 10 or $12 for like a $20 ticket. And I was just like, this sucks, and two, I'm scared that like people will get mad or just not come. so
Yeah.
so so I was like, would it be too much work to do something like just to avoid that? And then I was like, no, like Fish puts that kind of work in like a lot. Like they put that kind of effort in a lot. Um, so
Ticketmaster allowed you to do that?
what's up?
Ticketmaster allowed you to do that?
Well, no, that's where the work comes in. we we put the we put the web page up, and this is why we only do it for our Boston shows. Is we put the web page up, and we added it to our like our Shopify, or people could just Venmo the band directly. Um, and then a week or two before the show, since we live in Boston, I just go to the box office, buy the tickets without fees because I'm at the box office. And then scan their, or actually type the barcodes in, and regenerate the barcodes and print them back out on our own tickets and then mail them out to everybody. And then they have like a nice keepsake.
That's crazy.
But
That's a great
that's one,
idea.
that's one of the things where it's like, why the fuck am I doing this work? And then you're like, wait, like, they put the work in on for their big events, so I can put the work in for our big events too. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's a worthwhile cause, right?
it is. I wish we could do it for like for other places, like our Nectar show or Albany show, because it's fun, but then it also hopefully makes like people in Boston feel special too. So
I think what I like about Fish and like, Trey is, like as, with the trio and with Hartswick and all of them is like it's still danceable, but for two completely different experiences and two completely different like sounds. Like like
but
Fish
you
in
talking about
itself,
Trey versus Fish, Trey dancing?
correct.
Yeah,
Yeah. Like I still have no problem dancing to either one of those, iterations, but it's a completely different sound, and
yeah,
that's really cool. Like I don't think there's too many bands out there that can,
yeah, totally. I
uh,
mean, Tom York has no problem dancing to 15 step with his
that's a sight
maracas,
to see, isn't it?
so he can dance to anything too, I guess.
So have you ever met either any of the band members in Fish or Radiohead in person?
No.
Okay.
Our drummer met Phil Selway, I think.
Okay.
Not because they're both drummers, but just because he was at a Phil Selway show. But no, that'd be pretty cool to meet one of them or any of them.
Colin at our local bowling alley. He was with his wife, and his wife is actually from Lancaster. And so they celebrate the holidays every other year. And so he was there with his
You
kids.
broke up for a second, but did you say Colin? Colin
Colin, yeah.
married someone from Lancaster, Pennsylvania?
Yes, yep.
Crazy.
And so he has two boys. Luckily I had my King of Limbs CD in my car, and it was the cardboard one, if you remember, like that's how it was released.
Right.
And so he signed it, like said, to Chad, the best Radiohead fan in the world, thanks for being a fan. Like,
Run
yeah, it
out
was
to your car
awesome.
and grab it.
Yep, man. Yeah, yeah. It was
That's
awesome.
awesome.
Like, and he introduced me to his family, introduced me to his kids, like
Wow,
really
that's
affable.
cool.
Yeah, he was a really, really nice guy. And like I was losing my shit. Like I was like, because we're bowling with my kids next to him. Like I'm looking over and I'm like, man, that sure looks like Colin
But like,
Radio.
what's going? But like, it can't be because I'm bowling in Pennsylvania.
Right. Yep. And then I looked up at his name, because like obviously like the bowling screen has their name and it said Colin, and I'm like, yep, that's him.
That's really funny.
Yep.
That's also a
So
spot where, like, if you were a big noticeable celebrity, you would. I don't know if you'd think to not put your real name at the bowling alley. You
yeah,
know,
good
like,
point. Right.
you'd probably forget. Like maybe like Justin Bieber. Well, he probably has his own bowling alley, but like, it's like kind of celebrity like that. It's like he probably doesn't even think twice about putting it up there. But that's really funny. That's awesome. Have you
Just
seen him since?
dad. He could have just put dad.
Right, that's true too. Yeah, he could put dad.
No, I've not seen him since, but it was, yeah, and that was like 8 years. I think it was like 2015 or 2014 that happened. So it's been a while, but yeah, I'll never forget that.
Yeah, that's great.
So let's wrap it up, man. So yeah,
Sorry, I
you
went
said
on too
you.
many tangents.
Oh no, absolutely, man. This was. I hope you had as much fun as I did. So yeah, so like, what when you started this year, like when you started 2023, and you were like, this is what I want to accomplish. This is what we want to do as a band. Do you feel like on December 5th you were able to do that this year?
Well, in January of this year, we were hyper focused on arranging all the songs for Kid A because our show is February 3rd. So I don't know that I had any goals past that show at that
Okay.
point. And that show went off without a hitch and super fantastic. And we got the video from it, and it sounded good, and people came out and had a great time. And all the arrangements came together with, some of our favorite mashup arrangements. Oh, we didn't even get into what that is. Some of our favorite arrangements are from that show and from January of this year. So that was the goal we had for at that point of this year, and we delivered on that, and that went great. And then we had our our next show is this past like 2 or 3 weeks ago. We did in Rainbows, and I think we had, I don't know, not double, but like almost double the amount of people there at that show. So that went great too. So yeah, it's been a good year. Um, and I guess just to get into something you asked about earlier, and then we started talking, and then something I kind of just touched on now: mashup band versus tribute band versus cover band.
Yeah.
Uh, we have two kind of steadfast rules rules um for our like arrangements, and one is that no Radiohead song can stay the same. It has to be completely rearranged in some way. It has to be rearranged, and no Phish song can not be attached to a Radiohead song. So
Yep.
nothing can stay the same. We're not ever gonna send out a set list and be like, all right, learn Creep. Everybody learn Creep. All right, we're gonna play it. It's like, no, it has to be rearranged in some way for a live setting. And then it's on the other side, it's not going to be like, all right, now we're gonna play Sample in a Jar only, and that's it. It's just like, okay, it has to be like something has to segue into the Phish song, and something rearranged has to segue into the Phish song. So that's, and I think if you listen to it, some of our arrangements, some of them don't even sound like the Radiohead song until you hear like the vocals come in or
Right.
something. But like there are little musical teases and everything throughout it. But like that's why we kind of shy away from tribute band, because when I think tribute band, I think like a poster that's like note for note recreation of Dark Side of the Moon, and that's cool too. But that's like not at all what we're aiming for.
Yeah. So as a guitarist in this band, what is it about Trey? What is it about Johnny? And how hard is it to emulate both of them as guitarists?
Uh, it's hard to emulate Trey because he can shred, or at in his best moments, he's just a phenomenal shredder, and has had some really great chops. Um, but on the other side of that with Trey, he's also extremely, extremely, extremely patient, which comes, I think, with one, he's probably his personality and his playing style, but two, experience, and not getting ever getting to the point where it's like, all right, this is getting old. Let me like peak this jam and move on. Like he's almost never, doing that. And when you have less experience, at a large level, um, than he does, it's harder to like stay in that zone and stay patient and not just like rip it. And not that I can necessarily rip it the way that he does, but like it's sometimes it's hard not to just go for it. And that's something that I think all of us definitely work on, like show to show. We usually say like, all right, let's try to reside more in like the like 5 to 6 funk space before blasting it off into like 9 to 10 like rock space. And that's always like the challenge, is like staying in that groove for longer. Um, that's the biggest challenge about emulating Trey or Phish for me in general. And then I'm not really trying to emulate Johnny, um,
Right,
because it
because you're
is
doing, yeah, you're doing Phish
it's
interpretations.
technically in the style of Phish, but which doesn't say I don't like Johnny's playing, because I think his playing's awesome.
Right.
And the challenge, if I were to emulate Johnny, which like I've learned some of his parts and stuff, the challenge really isn't in playing so much as having the patience to sit down and program your pedal board like effectively and consistently. I have a couple like patches on my board down. Well, here's my little pedal boards down here, but
Nice.
not little. It's my big pedal board.
Yeah.
Um, but I have a couple patches on the amplitude pedal up, the green one up top, the delay pedal,
Okay.
that are like Johnny type presets. You're a guitarist?
No, not at all. Just a
Okay.
lover of music, man. Not not a musician.
Johnny's one of Johnny's big favorite trick across multiple albums is like a delay. Like delay, the effect delay. Bop, bop. Johnny's big like favorite trick is like a delay that's slower than you would think. So if he's playing at like this tempo, his delay would be set to like bop, bop, bop,
Right.
like slower. And
Almost syncopated.
yeah,
Ye-
slower. But then his big trick is that he sets it to one repeat a lot of times. Um, so like if he hits a note, it's like bop, bop, and that's it. But then in between, he'll play like another note. So he'd actually play like bop, bop, and then like
Yeah.
he lets the delay fill in the gap. And a lot of times it sounds like he's like doing crazy intricate picking techniques and patterns. When really he's not. He's like laser focused, just playing like a couple quarter notes, but his delay, his parts are written around the delay.
Yeah.
Uh, and so like if I were to say a challenge about emulating Johnny, would be the sit down and the patience of writing those parts around and programming the parts to be written around, kind of.
Gotcha. Well, man, this has been great.
Present tense is a good example of that
Oh,
trick.
yes, absolutely, man. So you said about Moonshaped Pool and In Rainbows. What is your favorite album from Radiohead? Do you have a favorite, or is that impossible to ask?
No, I my favorite is Moonshaped Pool.
Moonshaped Pool.
I
Okay.
really love it. I think it's everything that they've worked for, all come together in one. Um, I think I think In Rainbows is up there, but it's really not that hard for me to answer with Moonshaped Pool.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And unfortunately, it's the last thing that they've done.
yeah, but hopefully, fortunately, it's not the last thing that they will do.
Right. Yeah. Well, I just saw, yeah, Phil, I guess, was interviewed and said that it sounds like the pot's stirring, that maybe after the Smiles tour in Europe, I guess that they might try and
Yeah,
get the horses back together. So
hopefully. I feel like every
hopefully,
once in a while, once a year, one of them says that in an interview, and then it's like, then a
yeah.
bunch of other things pop up.
Yeah.
But Ed's album is awesome, by the way. Did you listen to the EOB album?
I have it's and even and I love Phil Selway's stuff. Like I love his voice. Like I love the vibe that he kind of like, like
Yeah,
it's very, just like with Radiohead. Like as soon as you hear it, like it's, so yeah, yeah, they're just all super talented, man. Like it's all it comes down to.
yeah, yeah,
But
they're great.
so do you feel are there any bands out there that you feel like can at some point maybe take the crown of either one of Radiohead or Fish?
Oh, I don't think that there has to be.
No, okay.
I
Okay.
think they're both as big as they are because they have resided in their own space and they've carved out their own space. And I mean, Radiohead isn't really the king of any scene. They're kind of just
Yeah.
the kings of, people just say, they're the kings, and they are what they are, and there's no scene underneath them because they're unique.
Right.
And Fish, there's the jam scene, but like they're not part of the jam scene really. Like they are a scene. Like they're the Fish. It's the Fish world is not the same as Bonnaroo and or anything. And I feel like Radiohead more and more is kind of the same thing, where it's just like both bands are their own scene. So I don't think there's really a crown to be passed. And do I think other bands could achieve either one's level of success? Of course. But I don't know that there needs to be a crown at all.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
like that answer. That's a good answer. So what like so yeah, I mean talk about like what is it about the Northeast that is just this huge hotbed for like the jam scene? What is it? Like have you ever thought about that? Like it really
Yeah.
is. It's the birthplace almost. And I guess
Yeah.
Fish has something to do with that, but I mean, you
Well, the
know,
Grateful Dead has California,
right?
but I think it's just probably proximity of cities. Like it's jam scene relies on, or not relies on, but a big part of the jam scene is following a band around, seeing multiple shows, multiple nights of a week. Because the fun of part of the fun of a jam band is that they're mixing it up and playing different set lists every night. And I think the Northeast probably makes it pretty easy to do that. So maybe that we're in a place where it's easy for people to do that and appreciate it, like, and understand that aspect of it. And maybe the same thing in California, where it's like there's a couple cities there, and I'm not really much of a Grateful Dead person, but like I know that they're a big thing, and they started a big thing. And I'm sure it just has to do with some proximity of cities and having people follow you around from one to one. But yeah, around here it's Fish, definitely. I mean, New York
Yeah.
City too is a big hotbed for that.
Yeah. It's funny too, because I told you like earlier, like I hadn't really gotten to Fish until about 5 years ago. I I was a lot more familiar with the Grateful Dead, way before that. And I appreciate both, but I think to your point, I'm more of a Fish fan as well. But that's not to say anything, negative about the Grateful Dead. It's just who you connect with, right? But it is very similar though. If you look back like on the Grateful Dead scene and now like you see the Fish scene, there are more similarities than there are differences.
Yeah,
And I think that's,
in the
you
scene,
know,
but I don't think the music. I've never really understood the connection because I don't think the music sounds anything alike. But sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
yeah, no, I don't, no, go with that tangent. I like that. Go ahead, finish your thought.
That was the whole thought. I
Yeah,
just I just don't. I think for a long before I listened to Fish, I thought that I envisioned what they sounded like to be what the Grateful Dead actually sounds like. Like Fish is
fair
like they
enough.
have these crazy compositions and shreddy moments and like through composed sections that are rooted in like avant-garde jazz and things like that. And they're doing things that the members of the Grateful Dead like physically probably couldn't pull off or play like in their prime, which no offense, they were good at something else. But like for a long time, yeah, when I just and was in high school and like Fish was like the pot band, like I just thought like, oh yeah, they're just playing three chords and noodling over them, and it's like it's the opposite of that. It's like they're playing like compositions and then improvising, like truly improvising, like passages over them. And and the Grateful Dead isn't noodling either. I think they work toward their own style of peak, but I didn't. I just never really resonated with me or been my thing.
Yeah. So you
But yeah,
said you've seen Fish over 50 times. When was your first show? And how old were you?
it wasn't that long ago, honestly.
Awesome.
uh, like 2017 around there, and
Wow.
yeah, so I would have liked for it to be sooner. I'm sad that I slept on the scene for as long as I did. Um, and then I tried to see them in 2015, but my band at the time had like I had shows when I would have gone to see them. I wanted to go to Worcester and I wanted to go to Magna Ball, but I was playing with a band that really wasn't in the jam scene at all. And the jam scene, being in the jam scene now, it's like things kind of grind to a halt of Fishes around you, because unless you're playing an after party, you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot if you're trying to book shows. you know um but yeah, so I saw him late, or I got there late too, but anytime I go see them, it's usually for multiple nights now, so it's just easy to do a bunch.
Yeah. Well, and that's a good segue because one of your first shows as well was Fish After Party, correct?
One of ours.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Or in our first year, yeah, that was some of our first like I I didn't think of it as a bigger thing at the time or a larger audience. But yeah, we played after they played at Fenway Park. We did both nights. Um, and at the time I thought, like, oh, I hope people show up. And then it was like, oh, we're relieved that people showed up. And I didn't really think about how many people showed up because they were free shows, so we didn't really have ticket sales or anything. Um, but more and more over time, when people say that they've seen us before, uh, it seems to have been at those shows a lot. Like that was a route for a lot of people, which has been it's cool to hear that after the fact and think like, oh, that sometimes you don't realize who like how if there's a lot of people in the room because that's great, they were there. But yeah, I feel like looking back, that might have been one of the first like little marks we made on the Boston scene. Yeah.
Yeah. I actually got to see a concert at Fenway Park. I got to see Pearl Jam Labor Day weekend, two
Oh,
nights, 2018.
oh,
So
cool.
yeah, it was a
Good
good time.
seats.
Huh?
Good seats, I hope.
Yeah, we were like basically like, press box area for night one, and then we were like infield night two. So it was, and
Oh, nice.
the press box seats actually, were actually enjoyed those seats better than the infield seats because like it was
Where are the press box seats? Are those like box seats?
directly center. I mean, you were directly center stage. Yeah, because like
Okay.
they shot, because you were in the center, they played in center field. So
Yeah.
yeah, it
Yeah.
was
I've only seen I saw Fish there twice, and then the only other concert I've seen there was the Foo Fighters.
nice.
Um, and both times I remember it being really weird that like, and just thinking about from the band's perspective, it's weird that the infield is just this like this
Yeah,
energy moat where it's just like there's nobody there. It's like people on the field, and it must be weird for the band to play out, and it's like everyone's kind of far away.
yeah, yeah,
But
yeah. Because you can't go on home plate.
right, right, exactly. It's sacred ground.
Right. Well, good stuff, man. Well, so again, thank you so much for doing this. Best of luck the rest of the year. Happy holidays, all that stuff. And yeah, man, if you get down to Pennsylvania next spring,
You'll be the
we will
first to
come.
know.
We will come see you, man. Definitely,
You'll be the
definitely.
first to know.
I appreciate that, man. Alex, thank you so much.
Hey,
Ladies and
thanks a lot.
gentlemen, absolutely. Yeah, this has been great. I've been Dog. You guys have been great. This is Alex. I'm the Music Lab Podcast. Hell yeah. Let me stop the recording. Hold on a second.
Sure thing.
Dude.